I got knocked around by Hollywood. Even now, there are things that, can be destructive, but I have worked on myself so much that I can see those who are the traumatizers in my industry and be like, oh man, they're just lost. They're lost in that. And I want better for them. But simultaneously, I'm not going to sit around waiting for my industry to become somehow saved. I'm going to go, I've been very actively trying to build an independent movie studio, living community so for people in my industry to be able to go create art and content and entertainment that is not being scrambled and infused with nonsense agenda. Just make great entertainment for the masses of all
the way Hollywood used to.
The way it used to be. And also simultaneously, if I'm going to go build a studio to go do that and accomplish that mission, well, let's go build a living community into it all so we can give people better lives, because we all deserve that too. And I think that there are people...
Have to get out of California.
Well, I did. I went to Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Austin, Texas. And
well, that's an interesting pivot point in your life when you moved to Austin, because your career was going well. You had starred in 2 series. You had done multiple projects. You moved to Austin, which everybody loves. We were just talking with another guest who moved to Austin and loved it. But it didn't start off that way. When you got down there, that was sort of your crisis point where you really thought about ending it all, despite the fact that you'd already starred in TV series on primetime television. Like many actors, I think you found it wasn't the Holy Grail. It wasn't going to fill up everything. And you got very, very low. So you mentioned this last time we were together. We didn't have a lot of time to talk about it. But can you just talk about how that hit you and how you then got out of that? Because that was before Shazam.
Yeah, it was right before Shazam. So I mean, like the bottom line is I was like most people doing what a therapist once told me, a lot of hit and run, meaning you're not the one doing the hitting, but you are the one doing the running. So you get hit with trauma. You get hit with, and trauma, there's a spectrum of trauma, right? So I know a lot of people like to throw it around like, oh, I've been traumatized, and they're not, or whatever, but PTSD in war, PTSD kind of stuff is one end of a spectrum of very intense trauma. There's traumas all the way across the board. Mental health is like dental health. You can have a little cavity, you can need a full-blown root canal. It's all the same type of thing. No.
There's a now famous clip of J.D. Vance and me in 2017 when I did this long profile on him on NBC. It's on YouTube. You can Google it. Everybody's seen it at this point. But where we kick off the interview by me ticking down raised in a house with domestic abuse, check. Yeah. Raised in a house with alcoholism, check. Yeah. Raised in a house with divorce, check. And these are all childhood trauma, CTEs, childhood trauma experiences. And he had all of them. I mean, so you're absolutely right. Like trauma, maybe one of those could be mild for somebody, could be severe for another, but a bunch of them in the same family leads to kind of massive trauma that must be dealt with at some point.
It must. And unfortunately, most of us are completely unaware that we're carrying this around. We have no idea. Most people are in this world, they're just surviving, right? And we're doing these hit and runs. Things are hitting us and we're just like, all right, I got to pick myself up and I got to run. I got to keep going because there's not enough time to sit and wallow in this. There's not enough time. I have to go work. I got to put food on the table. I mean, whatever these reasons are, you keep moving forward. And there's also a resilience in that. And I think there's something beautiful about the human condition in that we can persevere and we can do these things. But suffice to say, I was heavily traumatized from childhood through my industry, through my own stupid choices, bad relationships, a very short-lived marriage that was unhealthy, that I was an unhealthy person going into to begin with. My mom had died in 2015, and I hadn't really had a relationship with her in 13 years at the time she did die. And she died tragically, like alone, on a bathroom floor from complications of pneumonia. Like there's all these things that and you don't realize how psychologically damaging they can be or emotionally damaging they can be. And I was just trying to keep going, all right, put on that face, be actor guy, go do conventions. I love fans. I love spending time with everybody. I'm just going to keep doing what I do, completely unaware of just how broken inside that I was and that I did not have much more gas in my tank. And I, with a head full of steam and dreams, after many, many, many years of knowing that I was supposed to go and buy land somewhere like Austin and go build this new Hollywood and save the world and all of the things that I feel like God's put on my heart, that was the driver. That was the last bit of fuel that I had left in me. And it drove me all the way to Austin, and I bought my 75 acres, and I was like, all right, God, I thought in my hubris, I'm like, 2 years tops, I'm going to build this whole city and all this stuff. That was not the plan. But also, so I ended up there, and everything, I was like, oh, what have I done? I've blown up my life. I'm here alone, living in an Airstream on this land that's 30 minutes outside of Austin. It was gnarly. And by the way, and simultaneously, I thought, and this was a big factor I think it's worth mentioning. I thought, you know what? I'm also like physically, I got to clean up my body. I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking. I was a pack-a-day smoker for like 15 years. And that's a lot.
Really?
Yeah. And I had also had an Adderall prescription because I have dealt with ADHD and stuff literally my whole life. I was grateful that my mom never put me on anything when I was a child because I think it's important to allow a kid to not have to have that type of thing. However, I did find it to help me. The problem was that Adderall, I was depending on too much, and cigarettes, and not realizing that really what was down at the bottom of it, that's a dopaminergic dependency. Your dopamine system literally has been hijacked, and you need to keep getting dopamine in you just to keep moving forward in life. And I thought in my infinite wisdom, I'm going to cut all this out cold turkey.
Oh boy.
Holy crap. Combining all that unhealed trauma and all that unhappiness, and then literally pulling the rug out from my dopamine system and having no dopamine whatsoever, I fell into the darkest, deepest hole that I had ever really been in. And I was like, God, I don't want to live anymore. I don't know what to do. I don't even feel like you're real. I don't know where you are. I don't know why you've led me here to die in this darkness. And thank God I had the family and friends and support around me that I needed to just prop me up enough to then go to this 3 weeks of super intensive life-saving therapy, not too far in Connecticut. And it saved my life. It really did. But part of what was life-saving about that wasn't just all of this, let's say, clinical information that I was getting with lots of different therapists of different backgrounds and ilk. There was this woman. There were women who worked at this place who were companions. They were like these house moms. This place was set up for, CEOs that were like at the brink.
Do you say where you went?
Oh yeah,
Is it Silver Hill?
No. It's called Privé Suisse. Privé Suisse.
Oh, sounds fancy.
It does sound fancy. And by the way, and it's expensive. And that's part of why when I came out of there.
I mean, they all are. Frankly, they all are.
But we should change that.
Yeah, totally.
Which is what my mission is now, is trying to democratize, at the very least, mental wellness, mental health services and things, so that we can get people. If we can get everybody right in their own heart and mind, they start loving themselves, taking care of themselves, taking care of others.
No, I had a loved one go into one of these facilities for over a month, and it was completely life-changing.
Yeah.
But it was exorbitant.
Yeah.
I mean, it was extremely expensive. It was like $80,000.
Yeah.
And truly, no one can afford that. Nobody can afford that unless they have an extraordinary job.
Right.
And there's no
people
insurance,
like you and
there's
I,
nothing.
Sure, but we are a rare amount of people. And again, that's why I say thank God I had done well enough in my career where I could afford something that was so costly. But there was one woman there who, of all of these house moms, and they would rotate through and they would basically like take care of you because you were so despondent. They couldn't depend on you to even drive yourself to your own appointments. So like they would have these women who were wonderful, that were, either wives or mothers or both, that were semi-retired, who had big hearts and that wanted to help these people get through their treatment. And this woman, she prayed for me every day, even though she wasn't even supposed to. Like, she would pray for me.
Wasn't supposed to.
Well, yeah. I mean, in the book, I talk about it in the book, but basically, and I understand. By the way, they've also made amendments to their programming because of this and because of the success of it. And I'm very grateful to those folks at Privé Suisse for having seen the efficacy of it. But, what they wanted to make sure was that nobody was getting conflicting or contradicting therapy or advice, right? And sometimes you can go to a therapist that's giving you non-spiritual, just purely clinical advice, but you might have somebody over here in a spiritual sense being like, well, I don't know about that. Let's pray through it, or let's do whatever. And unfortunately, I do think a lot of people who are spiritual people, Christian people, they still have this weird, like, I don't know about going to therapy because all the answers I need are in the Bible. I just pray away all of my issues. I don't think that's how that works. Having gone through it myself, I definitely don't think that's how that works.
I went to therapy for years, and I had such a great guy. I haven't seen him in a while, but I love him. And he gave me so many useful tools to deal with stress or anything, sadness, conflict. It's just about widening your arsenal. That's what it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. And they can be very complementary, and as they should be. Your spirituality and your spirit and the spiritual wisdoms that are even found in the Bible that are I think, very much backed up by even a lot of what we're finding in science and clinical science and whatnot. But so because of that, they didn't want anything contradicting itself. So there was kind of a rule like, hey, don't get too personal into these types of ways. But this woman saw my heart. She saw who I was. And she is just one of the most wonderful human beings that I've ever met in my entire life. Also a mother. And she prayed for me. And she prayed me and loved me back to life, literally. Like there was a day that we were driving to I just got out of one of my appointments, and I was just distraught because I felt like I'm getting nowhere. Nothing is happening. I'm still in this darkness. I still feel like what's the point in living? And she was praying for me, and she said, hey, just know that, right now I'm not supposed to do this. So if you said anything like, I could potentially lose my job. And I said, oh my God, I would never say anything. Please don't stop praying for me. You're one of the only things that's still keeping me alive. And I always get emotional at this point. She goes, oh no, of course. And then we drive for a moment longer. And then she turns back to me and she says, but also know that I would gladly lose my job for you. Oh, as a kid who didn't realize that the biggest thing that I was struggling through was not loving myself. And the reason why I wasn't loving myself was because I had never really gotten that from my parents. As much as I know they loved me, they were struggling so deeply that they weren't able to model that or show that to me and my sisters, I think, in the way that they needed to. And so the thing that I struggled with the most in my life was that I didn't think I was even worthy of that love. And this complete stranger to love me, and legitimately love me. It wasn't like, we all tell people, I tell people all the time, I love you, strangers. And I mean it. I mean it. I mean it in the way that I believe God calls us to love, like as deeply as to love our enemy and pray for our persecutor, things we talked about last time. But this woman, she was built to be a mom loving energy in that moment, absolutely for me. If no other,
guardian angel.
Oh my God, legitimately, I consider her to be. And so all of that, that's all that came out of me moving to Austin and all of this stuff. And then the irony, or not irony, but the kind of amazing way that God works was I was still in this therapy. I was a week and a half in, or two and a half weeks into my 3-week course, essentially. And I had told my team in Hollywood, my agents and managers, I was like, guys, I am not good. I am going off grid for 3 weeks to a month. So if anything comes around, just we're hitting pause. They're like, awesome, got it, cool. 2.5 weeks in. Oh, and sorry, and quickly, prior to me going to this place, 2 months prior, I had been offered the opportunity to audition for the role of Shazam in the movie Shazam.
And you declined it.
And I declined it because I was like, they're not going to cast me. I'm not John Cena. I'm not The Rock. I don't know why they're coming after somebody like me. So I was like, thanks, but no thanks, and I passed. Again, not knowing that I was in a really low place of self-esteem and not believing in myself or whatever. So now, 2.5 weeks into therapy, I get this email from my agent or somebody's like, I don't want to bother you. But there's another role. There's a supporting role, very small, one scene read. If you're feeling up to it, but no pressure.
We continue to face uncertainty when it comes to the economy, with a perfect storm brewing as Social Security and Medicare hit a breaking point as the largest generation is hitting retirement. A smaller workforce means a smaller tax base. You pair that with our growing national debt and rising cost of living, and we could have a big problem. So what are you doing now to protect your family for the future? Gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times, and Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text MK to 989898, get your free info kit on gold, and get a copy of the Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, just information. Birch Gold has earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings. Just text my initials MK to the number 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.